Ah, Nebula dice. So swirly, so mysterious. How do you make them? Well, they're actually pretty easy, so I'll show you. Okay, let's prep your molds. I use sprue type molds made from Sorta Clear 37, and I like to seal the seams with clear packing tape. I also like to examine each one, run my finger over the access cut to make sure it's even and lined up. If you don't feel a ridge, then it should be good to go. And we're going to go ahead and tape up these molds and get ready to mix up some resin. Okay, molds are all prepared, so let's put on some gloves and prepare our work area for sticky resin. I use a piece of glass as I had a bunch of that laying around the shop, but to be honest, a silicone mat would probably be the best work surface, so I need to get me one of those. You also notice a very large super chunk mold there to the left, as well as the regular molds. I'm pouring that at the same time, but shh, that one's for later. We're going to be mixing up 4 different colors as well as clear resin, so I'm going to go ahead and set out a couple of Dixie cups to mix up my colors in. So what colors are we going to be using today? Well, I've got some Pinata Magenta. It gives a lovely pinkish red color. We also have the Pinata Blue. And as our secret weapon, we're going to be using a couple of smooth-on pigments from the Uvo line, one being Uvo Violet, which gives a really lovely translucent purple tone, and we're going to be using that. We will also be using Uvo Red, which when mixed with at least the Art and Glow resin, which we're using here, becomes somewhat opaque, which I really like using in these Nebula dice because you want at least one of your colors to be slightly opaque. You can do that either with the resin itself, using a lot of glitter or mica powders in it to make it non-translucent or a little more opaque, or you can do a combination of both, which we're kind of doing here today. We'll be using Art and Glow resin. It's really nice and thick. I like it for styles like this because it doesn't separate as much, especially if you leave it for about half of its pot life before you go ahead and pour it. So let's go ahead and fill this up. Remember, I'm using a lot of Art and Glow here because we do have that secret super chunk over there we're going to be filling up with some clear resin as well. Now, don't forget to mix up your resin really well. Stir it for at least, I'd say, 3 minutes. Make sure to scrape the sides and get it until you see no streaks. After your resin is thoroughly mixed, go ahead and split it up into smaller cups, leaving some clear resin in your original cup. You'll see what we did with that later. But let's go ahead and do that, and we're going to mix up some colors. Alright, let's mix up our colors. Put 5 drops of the Magenta Pinata alcohol inks in with this. I've filled up probably maybe 1/4 in these little cups. Mix it up really well, and it should be nice, bright, and translucent when you're done. Up next, we're using the blue Pinata alcohol inks. Put about 5 drops as well. About the same amount of resin. Stir it up, and it should be nice and translucent as well. Next up, we're going to be using the Uvu Red. Now these are very strong, so I use a popsicle stick, and I'm just basically just dip the end of the popsicle stick down in the pigments and use that to mix my resin, and it comes out a really lovely red, pinkish red, but that is slightly opaque, and we're going to multiply that by adding some sparkle powder or mica powder in the next step. Up next is our Uvu Violet. And we do the same thing, we just get a little teeny bit on the end of our popsicle stick and then use that to stir up with the clear resin. And it makes a lovely purple translucent resin. Now at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using 1 mil pipettes for the colors. And I also use the larger 5 mils if I'm going to be doing mostly like a base color, which in this case will be blue. I'll go ahead and put a 5 mil pipette in my base color. That way I can just use a little bit better. Now we'll be using sparkle powder by Sculpt Nouveau. This is a very, very fine mica. And I found that it does not sink as long as you let your resin sit for about 5 to 10 minutes after you mixed it in the colors to let it thicken up a little bit. We're going to put a little teeny bit in each one and a lot in our opaque red. Now make sure to thoroughly mix your sparkle powder in with each of your colors. And you're probably wondering why I've already put pipettes in the cups before I mixed my sparkle powder in. Well, I was filling up the chalk with clear and letting the other ones rest for a little while to let them thicken up. I like to use pipettes to squeeze out and see the state of how thick they are. But we're going to go ahead and we squeeze out the excess that's in there, mix in our powder, and then suck it back up into the pipettes. Okay, let's get to the fun part. Now we're going to go ahead and use the blue, which is I'm using as my base color, and I'm going to fill up probably about 1/4 of the dice mold with the blue using the large pipette. And then we're individually going to go through each color and swirl them around with the small 1mm pipettes as we are squeezing the bulb as we pull it out. Our goal is to get through all 4 of the colors and just fill up the mold right with that last color. It takes a little bit of practice, but it's not too hard. Now I always save my opaque color for last, the one that has the most mica powder or glitter in it, to create the plumes in the nebula. So you want to be a little more ginger with this one and not squeeze too much in there. Just enough, and swirl it around to get that effect. And then we top it all off with a pipette of clear. I like to jam it all the way into the bottom and squeeze just a little bit out as I pull it up. And that does a little bit of a swirling mix in there without disturbing any of the colors. Now just rinse and repeat for the rest of your molds, and you're about ready to throw them in the pressure pot. Alright, we're ready to load her up and put it in the pressure pot for 24 hours. I like to do my dice around 40 psi. I cure my molds at 45 psi to make sure they can handle the pressure of 40 psi and not warp. So we'll get those bad boys in the pressure pot and we'll see what pops out in 24 hours. Okay, it's the next day, so it's been 24 hours since we put them in the pressure pot. Let's get them all out. They're looking pretty good. Nothing cracked, nothing leaked out, so we're good. So let's crack one of these open and see what kind of results we got. And again, remember, when you're doing dice like this, they're going to be random, depending on how much colors and what you put in, how much you squeeze when you do it. And they're not going to be the same every time, but that's what makes them beautiful. Okay, I'm very pleased with these. These turned out great. Might use a little less blue next time. I don't know. That's the great thing, is you can always make a different set. So let's pull all these out, and then we'll get some good footage of them up close with the new lens, and then take some pictures of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and it helped a little bit in making some Nebula dice for yourself. So until next time, we'll see you here on Imagination Labs.